Hey everybody, we recently looked at the Greenworks 12-inch cordless cutoff saw. The 12-inch Greenworks cutter is powered by an 82-volt battery platform. And the beauty of the battery platform cutter like the Greenworks, all you need to do, you insert the battery, start cutting. There's no pull start, there's no 50-to-1 gas ratio, spark plugs, dealing with steel fuel or clogged air filters. Greenworks currently is offering 4 battery sizes. We tested our unit with a 4.0 amp hour battery. In hindsight, we should have tested it with the 8 amp hour battery because we could have used additional runtime. All right, first impressions. The Greenworks 12-inch cutoff saw is brushless, direct drive, zero emission power cutter. It's going to allow users to cut indoors and basements, no worries about fumes. And also just the reliability of starting with a cordless tool. It is compact, seemingly well built. And the cutter has a 4.3 depth of cut, 4.3 inches. It's lightweight and balanced. There is an LED light on the blade guards, a really nice feature. And we wondered, due to its proximity to the blade, if slurry splatter would build up and kind of obscure the LED during testing. It did not. It worked great. Operating the saw, simple and intuitive with an electronic power button, safety switch, and trigger. Piece of cake. 2-step process to turn on and off the tool. Again, easy, and we really like the simplicity of it. The cutter does have a deeper cut than some of the other 12-inch gas competitors, 4.3 versus 3.9 inches, and we liked that the 4.0 battery charges in 30 minutes. So we tested the Greenworks 82-volt cutter in several different materials: concrete, embedded with embedded rebar, metal pipe, and ganged up rebar. The metal cutting test that we did, we basically would outfit the tool with a fresh battery, abrasive cutting disc, and we used that Greenworks cutter to cut pipe as well as 5 pieces of number 4 ganged rebar. The cutter made the cuts fast, easy, and it was easy to use to do it. We also tested it with concrete test blocks. We poured 3,500 PSI blocks, 24 inches by 12 by 4.5 deep, and we used them recently in a head-to-head we just published. So it made sense to use some of the leftover blocks to test this Greenworks cutter, since it was not, it didn't fit into the head-to-head test we were doing. They were larger, deeper cutting capacity saws. But we had the blocks, and we figured it makes sense. Let's test the Greenworks cutter in it. So each of these concrete blocks had 2 embedded number 4 rebar running along its length. Now I want to note that the Greenworks cutter, it was not able to cut all the way through our test blocks, almost made it. We maxed the cutter out for cutting, and then we would count the slices that it completed. So we did what we would call a performance test. It was concrete with embedded rebar cutting, and it's a runtime test. And when you do runtime on cordless concrete cutters like this, it's important to discuss how batteries and gas operate differently. The number one question we're always asked is, how does this saw, how does a Greenworks saw compare to, say, a gas cutter? You know, for us to address this question, we included the Husqvarna K770 gas saw into this comparison to give you an idea. So here's our runtime test procedure. Without a test rig, to eliminate human pushing and variables and things like that, it's hard to do a controlled test. So technique was important, and we recognized that we needed to let the tool do the work and not bog it down, which is why we designed this test with the following criteria. So number 1, the Greenworks was set up with its proprietary diamond blade and fresh batteries. Husqvarna K770 had a full tank of gas and a fresh Milwaukee diamond blade. 4 operators were assigned to cut for the saw. So we used the concrete blocks, the 24 by 12 by 4.5 blocks. Each cut that we made was timed and recorded. Water was used on every cut, and each operator made about 3 cuts, and then we would swap out. We would rotate through the other 4 operators to prevent fatigue. We did this because fatigued users will tend to lean on the saw. Also, every operator employed a stepped cutting method, a back and forth cutting method, and they let the tool do the cutting listening to the motor. So they could apply as much pressure as the tool would allow, but if it seemed like the motor seemed to be bogging down or stalling a little bit, they would let up on the pressure and find that sweet spot. The test ended when the Greenworks saw battery died, 2 batteries, and when the K770 ran out of gas. The total slices, including any partial slices, were recorded for total lineal foot measurement. Now, note on runtime testing, with any power cutter, gas or battery, you will experience varying results. And it's going to be based on the material you're cutting, your cutting style, you're leaning too much on it, your experience for cutting, the blade you use. Even ambient temperatures can affect runtime. The more demand, pressure, or whatever you put onto the motor, for example, leaning too much on it, the more amps it will need to pull from the battery to keep the power output. Now, by the way, the same effect happens on a gas saw, except runtime just usually isn't taken into consideration because it's quicker to refuel versus recharge, right? Makes sense? All right, cutting results. So the Greenworks cutter made 14 cuts in the concrete. That's 14 lineal feet before draining both batteries. The Husqvarna K770 gas saw completed 30 cuts, 30 feet, before running out of gas. Now, it was also, by the way, that saw was also able to cut completely through the test blocks. It's got a deeper cut. We recognize we're cutting with a 4.0 amp hour battery. And if we had used the 8 amp hour batteries in this test, we probably would have been in the 28 plus or minus cuts, much closer to the K770, certainly in the ballpark. We did notice that the Greenworks 12-inch cutter, if you push too hard, you can bog it down. I mean, you can bog down even a gas saw, right? But it's important to let the tool do the work and not bear down too hard. And this is something that you need to pay attention to with batteries because you'll drain the battery too fast. The reality, though, is that the Greenworks cutoff saw can compete with the gas saw if you use a larger battery and you have two batteries. All right, improvements. If I were to offer Greenworks advice on how to improve this saw, it would be the water connection. The saw has a flexible water hose, which really makes it one-hand hose connecting almost impossible. We recommend that the water connection be maybe connected or mounted to the side of the saw and make it a solid connection. Just my thoughts on that. What's the cost and where can you buy it? The Greenworks 82-volt cutoff saw, it's $439.99 bare tool and $699 as a kit. That kit gives you the 82-volt 12-inch power cutter, a 12-inch diamond blade, a 4 amp hour battery, and a charger. Only one battery, unfortunately. So cost of ownership. So keep that one battery in mind when I talk about cost of ownership. I included this graphic below because it's an interesting story comparing cost of ownership with a Greenworks saw, 2 batteries, compared to a gas cutter. Now you save 2 years, $1,400. That's a significant savings, but you need 2 batteries to do it. So just keep that in mind. As far as final thoughts, we really enjoyed testing the Greenworks cutter, and we all agree when paired with a 4.0 amp hour battery, it's probably better suited for lighter masonry, cutting pavers and stuff like that. If you're going to be cutting basement slabs open like we do in remodeling, doing 4-inch depth cutting, you're going to want the 8 amp hour battery. We think, though, that battery-powered cutters, they do have their place, especially when you're remodeling indoors. And it's our opinion that contractors who cut concrete with, maybe 2 tanks of gas a day, that's the sweet spot to convert to a battery cutter. If you're only cutting 2 cuts a day, 2 gas tanks a day, or you're a remodeling contractor like me and once every 2 months you're cutting a basement slab, battery cutters make sense. If you're cutting all day, or you're using 4, 5, 7 tanks of gas a day, then you should just stay with a gas cutter, or you really would need to invest in a lot of batteries and chargers to keep up with that kind of a runtime and that kind of a demand. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. It was a short one. We wanted to give you a quick peek on the 12-inch cutter, the Greenworks. Greenworks is coming out with a whole bunch of pro-grade tools, OPE, and construction-related tools. So keep an eye out for them. They're really coming around the corner fast. I'm Rob Robillard. We'll see you at the next review. Take care.